Right. Woohoo!
Alright. Is it on? Are we doing it?
Recording. The Light Podcast. Season 1, Episode 1. Spitballing, not quite sure where we're heading. I'm going to turn that off so I don't see my fat stomach on the thing. First go, 2 microphones. Matthew Whiteley to my left.
Yo.
Let me get the thing back on. Like that. Matt Whiteley. Del Penny. Matt Whiteley, yeah. Del Penny. So, right, we'll just spitball because we haven't really got any topics yet. No topics yet. But so, I just by way of small introduction, I am. Well, what am I? I'm 48-year-old married man living in Sydney. I won't call myself an ex-Christian because I don't think that's a good thing to say. I would consider myself... So, went to church for probably the best part of 17 years. So, very much Christian. Brought up Christian for 17 years. Left, stopped going to church. Realised that I was more interested in going to the pub and all that sort of stuff. And then 20 years later, had a child with autism, made me start looking at things that were sort of took me down the spiritual path, perhaps. My mum kept telling me to go to church, read the Bible, ask Jesus into my life, which I don't think many people know what that means.
What do you say about that, people?
I don't think many people know what that means. I don't know whether Christians, when people say they want to ask Jesus into your life, oh, well, that could be, is that the topic? That could be the topic. So we're spitballing because we don't know what the topics are going to be. Usually me and Matt discuss things whilst walking around the house. We don't live in the same house together, but Matt spends a bit of time around here. And so I sometimes hear him talking to my wife about topics while I'm working, and then I pop my head around the door. I've got a blocked up ear, which is why I keep touching my ear. I pop my head around the door because I hear Matt talking about things, and then that usually escalates into some kind of in-depth conversation. And then we said we should get it onto some form of podcast because it'd be quite interesting because the conversations do go down quite an interesting little route, right?
Always.
Yeah. So, Matt, how would you describe yourself?
So, I am a 36-year-old practising Christian in the traditional sense of the word, which is why we often have some very robust conversations. But I will say I think that I'm for a practicing traditional Christian. I think I'm very open-minded in how other people see the world, and I think God has given me a good ability to be able to connect with people regardless of what they believe. And I think that one of the main reasons people don't like Christianity or don't want to come to church or have problems with Christians is because so many Christians either say that they accept and love everyone, but they really don't.
Yeah.
And that they're open-minded to all sorts of things, but then when somebody has a different view, they immediately want to convert them to Christianity.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really come across... It's not attractive.
No.
Which is one of the great reasons why a lot of people aren't Christian. But in saying that, I do adhere to the traditional tenets of the Christian.
But I also do try to do that, as you know.
Yeah.
Although I do use expletives, and I don't assign my actions necessarily to the man that was Jesus, of the teachings and the bits that I like.
Yeah.
What did I say? Is that I said we should do I said something. So my mum used to say, ask why I'd like you. So I used to. So I did all this esoteric. So my mum told me to read the Bible. My mum said, I want you to ask Jesus into your life, read the Bible, go to church, right? So I said, I don't think I want to go to church anymore because I don't like, this is really off-putting, having a blocked up ear.
We did pray for it, we did. I do believe that Jesus can do miracles, but in this instance...
I'm down with that.
Yeah.
I bet it just didn't work.
It just didn't work.
But maybe it'll work later. So my mum said to me, right, ask. So my mum, who's a practicing Christian, she's mid-70s, been at church all her life, as is my dad. And every time I would speak to my mum, and I'm in Australia, she's in England, and she would say to me, after I had given, so I would think to myself, I've almost educated my mum on, and that sounds a bit ego-y, but I'm trying to tell a story. I feel like at the time I was trying to educate my mum on how to live more peacefully. And so I'd give her like an example of how to live. And then she would say to me, oh, I wish you'd ask Jesus into your life. And I thought, well, I don't think you know what that means, because I believe what I'm saying to you is a demonstration that I've already done that. Because of what my interpretation of asking Jesus into your life is. But she said to me, go to church and read the Bible. And so I thought, well, I don't want to go to church because I don't think a lot of pastors, as nice as they are, vicars, priests, pastors, ministers, whatever, I'm sure they're lovely and they're teaching a good message, but I've never heard a pastor teach like that sort of profound, deeper knowledge, which I get a bit of a buzz from. Like, that's what I think is exciting about religious texts, rather than just a literal interpretation. And then, but my mum also said, as you know, 'cause I've told you lots of times before, oh, I wish you'd read the Bible. So I thought, well, I do want to read the Bible, because that was a bucket list thing that I wanted to tick off. So I installed audiobook Bible, 50 hours worth, listened to the whole thing. About a third of the way through, I thought, I'm recognising all the stories, but the God of the Bible sounds like a bit of a bastard. There's stories that I knew. It's like, it's all surrounding cities and knocking down walls and telling people to go and sacrifice their children on mountains, all this stuff. And I thought, that sounds a bit, even though I know the stories. And when I left church, it was because I thought that when I stopped going to church, I thought the stories are just fanciful stories.
Sure.
So then I thought there must be more to it than just the literal interpretation, which is about people, places and events. I thought there must be more to it. So then I started looking at esoteric teachings, and I listened to that concurrently whilst listening to the Bible, and then I suddenly started to have these revelations of what the Bible means to me.
Sure.
Which isn't a literal, I get 1,000% more out of the esoteric interpretation I do out of the literal interpretation. But the literal interpretation, I'm not saying the literal interpretation isn't real, and I'm not saying it's not a history book, but the concurrent psychological and emotional interpretation I get so much more out of.
Sure.
Right? So when my mum said to me, and other people say, you should ask Jesus into your life, what does that mean to a Christian? I'm not testing you either.
No, I mean, it's a good question, because it's something that Christians say all the time. There's so much stuff that we say all the time, if I'm honest, that you really have to think about for yourself and be like, why do I say that? What does it actually mean?
Why do you say it first? Like, not what's the meaning of it, but first of all, why do people even say those things?
You have to invite Jesus into your life.
Yeah, any of that, or like the grace, or the stuff that I say.
Sure.
Other things, other church chats. There's terms that lots of people use.
Sure.
Why do they use them if they don't know necessarily what they mean?
I think what happens is it comes from a certain scripture that forms theology within the Christian faith, and one of the kind of key scriptures, I think, for a lot of Christians, and the reason that they say that is when Jesus says that I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father except through me. Yeah. So it is a very black and white statement. It's a quite uncomfortable statement, because it does mean, well, I mean, I think it's a black and white statement. Jesus says there's only one way to the Father, and I am it.
Yes, but does that mean there's only one way?
Yeah.
And he can tell you what that way is.
Mm-hmm.
But most Christians believe that he is the only way. I think that's two different things. There's only one way to get to the beach, that secret beach. There's only one way to get there, but 100 people might know how to get there.
Sure.
And so if Jesus says the way is through me, to me that means you got to listen to the instruction that I'm giving you to get to that place. Whereas a Christian will say, oh, it's only Jesus that I can listen to because he's the only one that knows the path. And that's where I have the difference.
Yeah. Look, I think that if you're just talking about how to live your life at a conscious, moral level, then all religions offer you a similar pathway. You know, Buddhism's got the eightfold path to wisdom, and the four noble truths, and
what's that? Buddhism,
and Hinduism has they've got their pathway. Even Shinto has the four noble truths, and Islam has the 5 pillars, and Christianity has the 10 commandments. There's all these. They're almost all like a self-help book in that regard.
Yeah.
You know, here's the steps that you can do to be a better person. So I think at that level, all religions offer something.
Yeah.
And the differences at a holistic, moral, guiding level may or may not be that different. Of course, at a theological level, I think they're vastly different. But if you're just talking about, here's some rules for living your life, do the right thing, don't steal from people, don't kill people, love other people.
What do you need them in a religious book in order to know that those are the right and wrong things to do?
Oh, that's such a big question though, because that's like, is it nature or nurture? Like, are you born with the moral compass, or do you have to learn the moral compass? Like, people would say that you're born with this innate knowing of what is good, what is right, and what is wrong. Whereas I think that unless there is a moral law giver, someone who gives a moral law, then there's no moral law without a moral law giver. So I don't think we're born with the compass pointing in the right direction necessarily. Like, we don't necessarily know from birth what is right and wrong.
So even though let's go down the thing. Right, hold on, let me get mine.
But I haven't answered the question.
No, get
we
me
might get back there.
I'm gonna put down the thing on here. Because it will go in tangents. What was the first thing I said? Ask Jesus into your life.
Yeah.
Ask Jesus into your life. Jesus is the way. And then what was that last thing you just said?
Are we born? Are we born with our moral compass?
Yeah. So, for example, if you took that last bit. As a human being, from a baby, you know what fear is of danger, of hurt. Sure. You know when you've been wronged against. So if someone steals from you, hurts you, if you're feeling fear, it's because you're feeling threatened by something. Sure. So you know what it feels like.
Yeah.
So you must have some incorrect wiring to be able to inflict that same loss or damage on somebody else. Without God even existing, as a human, you know what makes another human feel good and what makes another human not feel good.
Sure.
So if you so does that mean that that you could be born, like for instance, Florence,
who's your daughter?
Yes, she might if she was 3 years old, she might take something because she likes it, because she doesn't understand that it's someone else's and that it'll cause that person loss. But does it need God in a book to say, oh, you shouldn't steal that? Because the parents would educate the child and say, hey, that you've done there is not nice to that other person, because the adult knows the feeling. Why does that need God to... Why does it need to be God that dictates that?
But they have... it, regardless of whether it comes through, it's still coming through someone. Like, so it's the same question for the parent. Like, where does that...
Well, I think it comes... Where does the rule come from?
Yeah, like, well, where does the sense of right or wrong come from?
Well, I think you would know, as a parent, as an adult, you would understand the feeling of... Does somebody... Let's say they live on a desert island. They've never heard of Jesus, God, the Bible, anything. Maybe it doesn't get a bit hot. Is it a bit hot?
It is.
Get a bit hot, so let's turn that on to 2. You're on a desert island. No, they don't preach Christianity.
Yeah.
And they've got 2 children.
Yeah.
And one child takes something from the other child and makes the other child cry.
Sure.
Does the parent need to know God in order to know that to tell the child, hey, don't do that to your brother, that's not fair. But the lessons that parent would teach that child, you'd teach the one child, you would say, don't do that, that's not right, you're taking something from someone else's that isn't yours, that's not fair. But you would also teach the other child, you would hopefully, or you should say, don't worry about it, share your stuff, let that person play with it even though they've not gone about it the right way.
Sure.
Does that need God? Do I need God to have told me that? But
I actually don't think so, because I think that you can, like I was saying before, you can still have a moral compass that doesn't come from like reading the Bible and having this book tell you what is the right thing, what is the wrong thing to do, because there are many lessons in many religions that you can, like I say, that you can apply yourself that are valid. So in that sense, I don't think that you necessarily have to have the Bible in order to be able to teach your kids morality. But
a lot of Christians will say you can't have morality without God. I've heard a lot of people say it, and I don't necessarily agree with it. But then the 10 Commandments that are in the Bible are pretty obvious and basic commandments on. Well, they're not. I mean, they're pretty. Most of them are pretty obvious, other than the first couple, which is love God above everything else, and don't create any false images or false idols. Is that the second one?
The first is love the Lord your God. Love others.
And then don't create any whatevers.
Idols or images of worship.
Yeah. So, but in the esoteric things that I've read, the 10 Commandments are a very basic set of rules, and then the other rules are the ones that you decipher through interpreting allegorically all of those other stories, which then build out more lessons around how to make your life more fulfilling.
Sure.
But right. Yes. Right. So, well, that's good, because we went down a thing there, and that's what normally happens.
Yeah.
So, asking Jesus into your life, what does that mean? Not testing you, just getting your opinion.
No, sure.
There is no right or wrong answer.
Look, I think the one of the fundamental differences between all these different pathways that potentially lead you to a higher consciousness or a path of enlightenment, they all offer you something, but, and maybe this is maybe too Christianesy, but Jesus, he is the way. Like, he is the path. The person is the path. Like,
the person or the lessons of what he's teaching.
He in and of himself and what he says. And that's a profound duality.
So him himself and the lessons.
Yeah.
So if you took him out of the equation,
yeah,
and it was just the lessons, is that the way?
I think you'd be missing a crucial element.
What bit would you be missing?
You'd be missing
the relationship with
Jesus. You'd be missing the relationship, which is the Holy Spirit that speaks into you to help you actually do the path. You know, like, because you can have all these steps that you've got to do, right? Like, in all of them. Most of the time you're going to fail. And you're going to fail at the Christian life too. You're going to fail at all of them along the way. But I also have a problem with me saying that because we say that, we fail. You know, like we're so afraid of perfection. We're so afraid of this idea of living perfect that we'll never attain it. And so we can't even fathom the idea of living perfect. Actually living perfect.
So what's then the difference between you following the instructions but then I'll say, well, what's the definition of having a relationship with Jesus?
Yeah.
And me saying, well, I don't really have a relationship with Jesus, but I consider him to be one of the most perfect humans that ever lived, if he lived.
He definitely lived.
Well, I'm happy with him living. I'm happy with him living, but I can't categorically prove it, so I would have to... I'm down with him living. Yeah. I'm not saying he didn't.
Was he God?
No, he wasn't God. He was the Son of God.
Okay. That's where we would definitely differ.
Yeah, but I don't... there's that... obviously, that's a faith thing, and that's a personal opinion.
Sure.
But to me, that bit also isn't important. Well, why is that? Oh, it's like the tangents! The tangents! Oh! Is he God? Right, no, hold on, because this is good, because this is the whole point. But this is what will get up this is what will bring up all the different topics that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Because this will go in massive
That
tangents.
is a huge topic. We'll talk for hours on that.
So to ask Jesus into your life, and again, not testing you at all. So your opinion, Matt's opinion, this isn't what every other Christian considers, because I'm going to ask you what your opinion of what every other Christian's.
Sure, I wouldn't know. Yeah.
What you think their definition of that is.
Okay.
So you said asking Jesus into your life is following the instruction.
Yeah.
And having a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Yes. I think this is good.
Yeah, it's good for me. It's good for you. It's good for
because all these things get said.
Yeah.
All the time in church.
100%.
No one thinks about. No, that's not necessarily true. Very few people think about the sentence and then dig into it and get an answer to what it means, which is the bit I think is quite fascinating.
Yeah.
So to ask Jesus into your life is to have a relationship with Jesus and to follow the instructions. If you had to put a weight of importance on those two things, would it be 50-50 or would it be more weighted, and how would you split it over 100? It's 100 grading.
I honestly don't think you can split them.
No, alright, so it's 50-50.
But they're like 50-50, but they're like
it's 100. It's 100. It's all mixed together.
50,
yeah,
100.
So then, what does a let's say, Brian, who's been going to 75, he's been going to the church for years.
Yeah.
He's been listening to a pastor or a minister talk forever and ever, saying the same stuff, and he says the word "ask Jesus into your life." What does he mean by that? Not what should it mean?
Sure.
What does he mean by that when he says it? Does he even think Does he even know what that means?
I mean, what he wants from the person, what the pastor wants from the person is for them to say a prayer inviting Jesus into their heart. That's like the altar call, that's that's what he wants. Whether or not he's dug into the greater meaning of that sentence. I mean, I've been in hundreds of church services where that's the goal. That altar call moment is the... And I think there is some merit to the altar call, but I also think that I heard one preacher say it, and I thought it was good. He's like, if you're going to do an altar call, there should be barbed wire at the altar, because what you're actually asking.
What's an altar call?
An altar call is like where, like, hey, this morning, like, or this evening, like, if you can feel Jesus knocking on your heart, speaking into your mind, I just want you to, in 10 seconds, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Okay, 10 seconds, and they'll give it time, they'll let it brew, let it percolate. In 10 seconds, we're gonna just raise your hand.
Is this going on at your church?
It's not, no, I'm at a little church with...
No, but like at the one that you used to go to. This is a
Pentecostal, very Pentecostal church, yeah. And without fail, and I don't want to sound too critical, but
we're not criticising. We're analysing. Analysing, not
been
criticising.
In many churches now, in a very small uniting church with lots of 80-year-olds. So it's love my time at a big Pentecostal church. Like I'm a lively. I like that kind of thing, but I also anyway. Yes. So the altar call. Would love you to accept Jesus into your life. If that's you, everyone close your eyes. Head down. Do I see any hands? Basically, and there might be a hand.
Why? And so why did you say you put barbed wire there?
So
people aren't sort of taking it lightly. Is what you're implying? They're genuinely meaning something's happening.
Yeah, and that what they're asking you, I think, it is a massive decision. Sometimes it can be something that people decide because they feel a certain emotion in the moment, especially in a big charismatic church.
You're whipped along with a frenzy, and maybe
yeah. Right, and look, there are people who have been whipped up in the frenzy, and then like have genuinely discovered Jesus and gotten into the Word, the Bible, gotten into the Bible, started reading it, and their whole life has been transformed. So there's merit in that, but there's probably more people that have had that moment, put their hand up, and then nothing changes.
So they've said. So the thing that the pastor said, they want you to invite Jesus into life. And there's been an altar call in a Pentecostal style church where they said, "Can you feel Jesus?" And people have either genuinely they believe they've genuinely felt a Jesus thing come into themselves, or they're whipped along it. Either way, but. If you're asking Jesus into your heart, what does that mean? You're actually asking that to happen?
Well, I think in a sense it is. It is very simple. You're surrendering your will, like to God's. That's what I would say it really means. So, which is a huge thing, and most people don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because the idea of surrendering your will to another being is like, it's almost counterintuitive to what we feel like we've been born with. It's like this whole COVID stuff. It's like, if you don't feel free, or there's an attack on your freedom or your liberty, then it's very difficult to imagine willingly surrendering your life to this omnipotent.
And then what does it mean
God.
to surrender your life to another thing? Tangent.
Well, it's. I think we'd agree on this. It's to actually say no to the things that are ego, to self-driven, to self-promotion.
So then my thing is. So then how does that person know whether Jesus is now in their heart? And obviously if someone has asked Jesus to go into their heart, surely Jesus will go into every heart.
Yes.
Unless it's not being asked with conviction. So but let's say Jesus has gone in, so I've gone into the church as Dale without Jesus in my heart. Yeah. I've had a thing, I've gone out, and now Jesus is in my heart. What's the difference?
Well, now you get into some like really heavy Christian theology about like Calvinism and Arminianism.
All right, so let's not say anything about that. Let's just look. So I'm just the bod that's come into church. Yeah. And again, I'm not taking a piss here at all. I'm genuinely asking the question. Yeah. Because I've got my own belief. I'm questioning you because I've got my own interpretation of what it means. Yes. So if you ask, so you go to church, you ask Jesus into your life, you feel. something's happened, and I walk out. What's changed now? Just me. Not theology or any of that other shit that's going on. Just what is now happened to me, and how am I different?
Well, I think that one of the key fundamental differences is that you have like a new voice in your head, which is the voice of God. You know, like that's the Holy Spirit, and people talk about hearing the voice of God and being led by the Spirit, and I think a component of that, as weird as that sounds, is having like this new voice in your head. It's a whisper, because you're still going to have these other voices that are loud and probably a lot louder than the voice of God. What I've learned is that for me, the voice of God is quiet. It's very quiet.
So would you so obviously you've always got two voices in your head. You've always got the one that says, that guy, you know, I'm driving along and that guy's a fucking asshole that's just done that. And then the other voice that goes, just let it go, doesn't matter. They're probably in a bad mood, they're in a bad... Right, but because...
Do they?
No, let's not get into that.
Okay.
But we're in a society where that voice is so quietened that all we hear is this other voice. So we don't even know that other voice necessarily exists. But it is there. It is there, because if someone was to say to you, I don't, you know, you could go, oh yeah, I can hear that. I can hear that voice. I just chose to be overwhelmed by the loud voice. Yeah. So are you saying that if I go into church and ask Jesus into my life, suddenly that voice is louder?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. And that's obviously...
Yeah, that's what I do believe that.
So, but is that then let's say that you want to lose weight and you've said the new year, I'm going to start eating healthier. Yeah. When I go to the fridge to get the caramel roses out of the box, the voice says to me, Dale, you said you were going to lose some weight, so don't do it, right? Sure. I've not needed anything else external other than my own choice to start listening to that other side of me. Sure. Did I need, and I'm really, this isn't me taking a piss, this is a genuine question. No. Did I need, you know, Boris, the god of dieting, to invite him into my heart in order to be able to hear that voice? Or was it just a decision? I consciously made a decision that I'm going to start to listen to the quieter voice that I know is in there, but it's too easy to usually ignore it.
Well, I mean, at some point you make a decision. So I think it's whether it's that altar call moment, or I mean, it doesn't have to be in a church, but but there is a moment. It's
a catalyst that's made you go, I've got to start listening to that other voice that's in my head, and not the one that's right. So that means that voice is in there. That voice is already in your head. You needed something, and maybe you might have been whipped up by the religious stuff that was going on. You're like, oh yes, I feel like that. I'm emotionally engaged in this, and I want to be now part of this. And then you come out and you've switched that switch where you're... It's the same with, you know, when I was doing, you know, cocaine. Yeah. Every day, every 4 times a week for 10 years. Sure. That something switched, the fear of thinking I was going to die of some horrible drug issue, and wasn't ever a drug. That I did do it regularly. Yes. But there was a switch. I said, right, I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah. And then I was like, I don't want to let myself down, which is why I feel like I was strong-minded enough to overcome that challenge. But it was a decision I made that I'm on the wrong path and I need to change that. But it wasn't. It could have been Jesus, and he might have. But to me, I don't need to visualize it as a Jesus. I need to just visualize it that I chose a higher path to the path that I was on.
I mean, I know, and we touched on this before, and I don't know if I'll articulate it well, but the whole relationship thing, because it got me thinking, because we had a chat the other day, we started talking about what that means, and I went away and I thought about it, because it is something...
Thought about what?
Like, for Christians say you've got to have a relationship with Jesus. Yeah. And I still stand by that, I think it's true, but I had to think about it, because it is something that Christians just say, you know, like, I need that relationship with Jesus. And I think whether or not it's crazy to picture him, like, I don't necessarily, like, sit there trying to picture what Jesus looks like, but I certainly have a personification of him in my.
Do you need that personification in order to be able to understand what the God thing is? Or because that's what a lot of Christians say. They say, "I need." My mum says, "I find God to I'm not. I don't know what the word is." She's like, I can't imagine what God is. So Jesus is my way of imagining what God is. But so I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But that doesn't discount from the fact that do I need the Jesus bit in order to be able to connect with the God thing? You see?
I think it's. I mean, I guess it depends which God you believe in. And if you believe in the Christian God, then Jesus plays an integral role in connecting with the Christian God, and they are one and the same, but they are different elements of the same God. And so it's talking about the Trinity and the triune God is a difficult subject because it is profound. It doesn't really there's no great way to articulate. I know people talk about the ice, like ice is both water is ice,
and steam and all that,
and all that, and it's maybe there's some kind of truth there, but
look at all the topics we've got.
But anyway,
we've got millions.
I do think that you need, in order to have a holistic, deep understanding of the Christian God, He designed it so that there are three elements to understanding him, and it's having this connection with the Father, with God, and they're all equal. But
is not God though? No, that's another topic. It's another topic. I've got to put. Let me because I could go down that route as well, we could go down there, but I reckon we'll keep that one because that's the three in the.
We can talk about the Trinity later, but it's. But your question was like, do you need Jesus? Like, do you need Jesus to connect with
God, the God thing?
And so now we're talking about what is connection? Like, what is connection? Because anyone can do the steps. Like, you can do the steps. I can read a book and go and maybe I've got a strong will, and I'm like, that'll make sense. I'm going to do my best to do that. Yep, I'm going to do this, do that, treat other people how I want to be treated. And I'm not going to harbour ill will towards people. I'm going to be forgiving. And there's all these things that you can set about doing the part. And I'm all for doing. There's a lot of Christians that don't. We've talked about
the action and the thing, and that's not going to get you. But if you've asked Jesus into your life, so you've gone out of the church. The man said, "Put your hand up." You've put your hand up. You've gone out.
Yeah.
What are you then doing once you've between Sunday 1:00 and the next Sunday? What is now happening during your week?
Well, I think, and this is why I started talking about the barbed wire before, is that there might be no change at first, because you're like, it's all so profound. You had this moment where you felt something and you put your hand up, but I think that there often is a lag. There's a lag, and I would say it's always the case. Some people will probably receive Jesus and they'll go out and they'll immediately find that they don't want to use drugs anymore. They'll immediately find, and there are people who have these testimonies. God just dropped a bomb on me, and I had no desire to smoke cigarettes anymore. I had no desire to be cheating on my girlfriend anymore. Like these things, and I realized that what I was doing was wrong, and my lifestyle was wrong, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I just started praying. So I think prayer is a part of the whole relational thing that we haven't talked about, But
at what?
So some people do get, what is it?
But then at what point because as we've had this conversation 1,000 times before, and we're now just doing it for the purposes of this. Yeah. Is that what seems to be the Christian way? Let me just see what I think it's very professional. What time is it? 9:29. Okay, I've got 15 minutes. The fundamental, it's not beef. I'll call it beef. The fundamental beef that I have is that the Christian church sort of conversion way is my experience is similar to what you were saying. It's get people in, get them, which is good, get them all sort of excited and revved up and emotional and wanting and like having a revelation where, okay, I think I'm on the wrong path here and I need to make a change in my life. And they might come out and they might start saying, I was emotionally attached to that thing and it's done something where it's brought on some emotion. And now, like, I might have when I go to sleep, I might shut my eyes and have a chat to this dude, right? And I'll have a thing and I've unlocked something inside myself which is inherently better than the bit that was me before. But the thing that I say is that I don't think it needs to be from an outside of church perspective. Having been in church for 17 years, Boys Brigade, youth group, church every Sunday, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
From then leaving and coming back, I now see it differently, and I think to myself, I'm not discounting Jesus, but that stuff can happen, in my opinion, without having to go to church and having. It could be any catalyst that might have. It might be you have a disabled child, you have a death, a grievance, or something.
Sure.
Something that makes you go, that's like my life needs to change for some reason.
Totally.
So I feel, so then the issue is that you get the Christian church is trying to convert people to become Christian for whatever reason. That might be because they want them to have a better life, which should be the only reason.
Sure.
But a lot of it feels like, we want you in our gang. Like,
Sure.
well, you're one of us. And I don't feel like that's the right way to be promoting Christianity. And so I think, as we've said before, I think it should come from a different angle because Christianity, to me, is about a selfless act of service to others, love, kindness, compassion, generosity, humbleness, meekness, blah, 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 fearlessness, living in the present, all that stuff. And it's not supposed to be about, do I go to heaven? Does Jesus love me? If I pray, what am I going to get? I want my life to be better. Why? What? Me.
Sure.
That's the bit I have a fundamental issue with. Now that I've now that I've looked at stuff and I've had the realizations for myself.
Yeah.
So then when you have that Christian chatter stuff, you're going to snag 2, and you're going to put off 8.
Sure.
I reckon. Just to get the people through the door to go to church in the first place is not easy.
No.
And then you might get, let's say you get 10 people through the door because you say, just come to the church and let's see what you think. And you might do one of those things, you won't at your church, but at one of those Pentecostal churches, they'll say, and maybe 1 or 2 people will go, yeah, I feel it. And the other 8 will go, oh, fuck it, that's not interested. I'm off, I'm going. And they never come back. Whereas I feel like to get those people, to get more of those people, it should be, I feel, and I could be completely wrong, but I don't think there is a right or wrong. This is what Christianity is. And even what Jesus was the dude that taught the lessons on how to live your life so that you can connect with the God thing that it is, and how to live life being a good person to others, which essentially is what Christianity was.
Sure.
Jesus wasn't going along at any point saying, I do this because I'm going to do that. I do this because of this. I've decided, and because I'm having a really tough life. You never heard him say that ever.
No.
He said, if you're having a tough life, do this, this, and this. If you're doing this, do this, this, and this. It was all about him giving to other people.
Sure.
And if someone would have said, I'm doing Jesus, I've got this issue, can you take it from me? He would have said, give it to me, I'm happy to take it. You go and do it, right? So it's
he does say that, yeah.
Of course. So that was all about, his teaching was, this is what you're supposed to be like.
Yes.
It's not look at me and put all this adoration in me because I'm God. It was do what I'm doing to have a peaceful life.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing it in Jesus' name. He was just doing it.
Yeah.
So now we put all the focus on Jesus. So so my theory is, if someone goes to church, has never been there before, people should be getting taught that the deeper esoteric lessons which are around those 10 lessons of live in the present, give without expecting to receive, blah, 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 don't judge, don't do that. Because if you follow those rules, which is doing good for others, you instantly you have a weight lifted off you. You stop worrying about yourself. You stop worrying about doing, and that you'll get that same feeling of connection from the pastor who said, "Who feels Jesus? Oh, I feel Jesus." But if you said, "Go out and spend the next week doing everything for everyone else. Don't think about yourself once," I guarantee you'd have that same emotional connection, and it wouldn't be necessarily I'm going to say it. It's not going to be a false one that's being generated by whipped along in an emotional hours sermon.
Yeah.
It's going to be a genuine connection with, I feel good because that's like I've just done that stuff for others. I put myself out.
Yeah.
And that's what I think Christianity is. And so Jesus to me doesn't, at this point in the process, Jesus doesn't need to even exist other than as being the man to teach it.
Right.
And then at the point where someone's going, I learnt those lessons in church about not judging, and I've practiced all week. I kept getting this little voice, and I said, I'm not going to judge that person. I'm going to think loving thoughts about them. I've helped that person annoyed me. I was waiting in the queue, and instead of waiting and getting cross, I offered to pay for their stuff, and that made me feel good.
Yeah.
I was worried about. I was jealous about the thing, but the lesson of living in the present was forget about the thing that's happened in the past or the thing that you think is going to happen in the future and just be happy in the present. And all those things that don't involve Jesus other than Jesus taught them allegorically in parable. So then, once those people have done that and they're like...
feeling good.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, those lessons are in the Bible. Let me show you where they are in the Bible.
Yeah.
This is the dude, Jesus, that everyone's like not interested in. He taught that in the Bible. Oh, where did he teach it? Oh, well, he taught it. This was the parable about that, or the allegory about this means this is da. And I think I believe, and I could be totally wrong. What do I know? Because I don't go to church and I don't preach. I think 8 out of the 10 would go, I'm down with that.
Totally. I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I mean, all I think is that it's an indictment on the church that they're not like that. That they're not more like that. Some churches are.
Yeah.
And they make it their point to go out during the week and love people. Like what you're saying is love people. Just love people. Like actually love them, and you'll grow the church. You know, like people will want to come. And
so do people?
What you're doing.
When you go and sit in a church sermon, do people make it that obvious?
I think they sometimes do. Some preachers are great at it. And they're more mission-oriented churches. And for me, part of the reason why, and again, not bashing any churches, but part of the reason why I've left a big church that's very charismatic, which I think is fine. I love charismatic churches, but there has to be everything you're saying. You have to go into your community. You have to go into the places where people are doing it tough. You've got to go into the places where the drug dealers are using ice, and you've got to go into the places that are uncomfortable. Churches don't do it. Churches don't do it.
I agree with that, but that's almost going over and above what's necessary, because you've got that there's a microcosm of those communities sitting in your church right now in the congregation of 100 people. There's those two there having an affair.
Sure.
That one there's got a drug problem that he's not telling anyone. That person there's looking at terrible pornography.
Yeah.
That person there's doing whatever. That person there's stealing from their whatever.
Sure.
Like that's all going on.
Yes.
So you don't. I mean, go into the community and do that, and that's what you should be preaching to all of those. I guess.
Sure.
I guess as a hardened Christian, that should be just part of what you're doing because you're taking it to the next level.
Sure.
But when someone goes to church and they hear a lesson about Jonah the whale or Samson and Delilah or whatever that might be, David and Goliath or any of those stories, does that person go out of church having taken something really profound? Because they might have asked Jesus into their life 7 years ago.
Sure.
They've been coming to church every day. They're still doing whatever the wrong things are because they haven't got what the sort of message is. So what? I don't even know what I'm getting at. My mum, who's gone to church for 70 years, surely, if you've gone to church for 70 years every week, shouldn't you be almost an enlightened guru at this point? And you should be able to pass down all of these lessons the fairly simple lessons on how to live life the way that Jesus described.
You'd hope so.
but people don't because it feels like they go to church and they don't hear. They go and they listen, they sing some songs, they chat to people and they clap and they do all that good stuff and they might pray with the pastor, but they haven't had that profound, like penny drop moment. That's what kind of bothers me about churches a bit. But why doesn't a pastor say, okay, maybe they do, I'm sure they do. This week, would a pastor ever say, this week? Oh no, they never would. Don't worry about Jesus this week.
Yeah.
Don't worry about Jesus this week. Just worry about doing this one thing. You can pray, go and pray to Jesus. That's fine if you want the, or even it'd be interesting if they said.
Pastors do. I mean, lots of preachers do that. They give you this is what. Like, I'm interested. Ask you a question because you talk about it regularly. When you talk about the opposite of teaching allegory, so teaching the literal interpretation, give me an example, like slightly more in depth than just glossing over. Like, and because there are lots of literal stories in the Bible that could be allegorical or are allegorical, but you always say they're taught almost exclusively as
literal. Yeah.
But when you say that, give me an example of what you mean without just saying the topic. Like Jonah and the whale is a great example.
Walking on water. Jesus walking on water, for example. That might be Jesus. So the literal interpretation of that would be, well, Jesus is God, so he can do anything. So trust in him.
But how would a preacher preach that topic and just keep it literal?
Well, I don't know. I feel like if I went and listened to it, it would be 5% of some message and 95% fluff to make up a chat. And that might sound really bad. Okay, so let's say the Noahs Ark story.
Yeah.
The message would be trusting God. If you trust in God like Noah did, you'll be saved, and God's showing that He's all powerful. In fact, let me throw it back slightly. How would a preacher preach the story of Noah, roughly? Not they don't go the whole thing, but what would he be highlighting?
He'd probably be highlighting. Just the first thing that comes to my mind is him building something, even though it looked crazy. So it would be probably a message on faith.
So you don't know why you're doing it. There's no evidence of there being any issue.
Yeah.
But you've got to go and do this massive task in order to be prepared for what's coming.
Yeah, being obedient. So it'd probably be a message on being obedient. So these are all. That's not a literal. Do you know what I mean? Like you're taking a literal story, but you're trying as a preacher to find the inner.
Yes.
Because there's no point in me talking about the. I mean. Yeah, maybe it's interesting to talk about the size of the ark. It was this big, and this is how many cubits it was, and it stored this many animals, if you believe it was true. Like, all that stuff really doesn't mean anything. So the preacher, most of the time, is trying, whether or not they do it.
I agree. But I don't feel like... I feel like when they do that, based on my own experience of going to church, when they do that, it's not profound knowledge.
Sure.
It's pretty... sort of, I'm trying to work out what it is, but how, if you were to take just the obedience line, how does that benefiting me in the present as a human being today, as an example? Well, I'm not testing.
No. Well, it might be something like you have felt called to do something. This is how I would preach it as a traditional Christian preacher. I would probably be saying, like, is God trying to tell you to do something? Like, you felt, and maybe you didn't think it's God, but you felt like, I should do this. It's been like, I mean, take for example, you've wanted to do some clothes, like your own brand of clothing for a long time, right? Yeah. And it was in your mind, and you felt like, I really should do that. Like, I'm gonna do it, but you don't do it, and life goes on, and then you really feel like you're like, no, I'm meant to do that.
Yeah.
Don't really know why, because I've got a job and it pays me well, but I don't know why.
It's a calling that you have that you've got to do.
It's calling me, I've got to do it. But let's say it required you to not work for 6 weeks because it's that big a task. So you really want to do it properly. And the other side of that is, well, I've got bills to pay. And God's like, that voice is saying, yeah, but this is the thing. Yes, you've got bills to pay. I understand. But that's the fact. That's the faith preach, right? Yeah. Like, and that's a challenging topic because that God does call you to do things that require you to put aside your own, like I've got to provide for my family, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and I don't want to be silly, like I don't want to be unwise and just like throw it all to the wind because God told me to do something. But sometimes that like God is pretty crazy. Like he is pretty wild, and that Jonah story is the Noahs Ark is an example of that. People would be like, "What are you doing?" His family, like, "What are you doing?" If it, even if it's allegorical, like, what are you actually doing? Like, he's got kids, he's got a family to feed, and you're just every day you're out there building an ark in the middle of the desert. Like, there's no water around here, there's no rain. Like, you're mental, you're actually crazy. So, I mean, that's how I would preach it.
Yeah, I like that. But that is also quite a big, does that then mean people are looking for, that's a reasonably big, does that then make, maybe I will leave my job to go and do the thing that I'm doing, which is fine, maybe it is.
Yeah. There's heaps of people in that boat.
Yeah.
God's been trying to get them out of a job for years, but the fear and the, faith is essentially an antidote to fear. Yeah. Because your rational mind is telling you that you have to stay in that job to pay your bills.
Well, that is esoterically, that story is about essentially the same thing, which is, but there's meaning to the flood, and the storm and all that. Yeah. Is that
like the water is consciousness?
Yeah, there's the mind, and the storm is the and that. So from a esoteric, I think what the esoteric teaching does
adds a layer.
It adds a layer that is more aligned to just everyday, like every minute of everyday stuff. Whereas so that's a good. What you just did there was that's a good interpretation of what it means. And you don't always hear that when you're hearing it. You might be, Jesus sent a rainbow and get trusting God and everything, be fucking sweet, right? But esoterically, it takes it to a much more microscopic level, where it's saying the water is your mind. The storm is allegorically your mind, your tumultuous thoughts, racing, worry, jealousy, fear, doubt, belief. All this, it's all which is almost everyone gets it. Gets that every day, 5 times a day. Playing a sport, whether it's in life, with your money, with your job, with picking up the phone to make a phone call, that's a thing. You're like that. That's in esoterically. That message is when your mind is racing. Make sure you have a place of refuge where you can go to say calm, or the Jesus getting out the thing in the storm and that's the same. It's when Jesus walked on the water, wasn't there a storm on the boat and everyone was scared? Yes. And then he said, and he got out and he walked on the water and said everything's sweet. Yeah. And in mysticism, water is the psyche, and every time it's a stormy water, that's your mind. Yes. And Jesus walking on the water was, I've transcended thought, and I've transcended thought and emotion. I'm above it. Nothing phases me. And you're letting it all phase you. Yeah. So on a day-to-day, so I use that. Yeah. Almost every day. I use it on the squash courts. I'm taught by the chap who's telling me when you're under physical duress, your brain will start saying, "Oh, you're going to lose. Oh, he's doing this. Oh, he's doing that much better. Oh, it's too hot. Start trying to. Oh, you're tired. Start trying to cut the corner. Yeah. And that's the same for life. Or I'm going to pick up the phone and the guy's he's probably going to be a shit to me, and I'm not going to. Oh, that deal's not going to come in. I'm not going to be able to pay the bills. And the esoteric message is just chill, baby girl. Yeah. Just relax, let it all calm. Everything's calm. The calmer you've got it in your head. That to me is a lesson I can use every single day. Yeah. the lesson that you're teaching is a wider picture of, okay, if I get a calling, oh look, what's going on there? Why is it paused, man? If I get a calling to do something, I'm going to listen to that. But I just feel like there's more. It's like there's a deeper thing that helps me right now, and I feel like that bit of that layer, which is the most super important to getting everyone's lives on track, is the bit I feel that's missed a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with anything you just said. I think it's a great, that's a great lesson there, and it's just because I would love. I mean, everything you said then, you could preach in a church, and I don't think anyone would have any problems with it. It's just the...
And it doesn't take away... It's not taking away from
No.
what you're teaching at all.
No.
It adds another dimension to the conversation.
Yeah. I mean...
It's gone. It's not working. What's happened? Oh no, imagine if it didn't save it.
Yeah. Is this one recording though? Your voice will just be very distant.
Oh, that'd be a bummer if it hasn't, wouldn't it?
But is the sound recording through...
Video's recording up there though.
Sure.
I'm gonna have a look. Let's have a little look.
And is mine recording or not?
Yeah,
is that recording? Well then...
I don't understand why it's doing that, but that's a shame.
And you've got the best Mac. You should never see the Wheel of Death on that new Mac.
Try recording again.
No! Is that what it said?
Yeah.
Oh no.
But it's alright, because we've got your thing on there, not responding.
Oh.
You bugger. Alright. Okay, well that's... Yeah. That was quite good.
The Lord only wanted to record what I had to say.
Yeah. Oh, come on, Jesus, it's your birthday. Theoretically, he's in here, isn't he?
Yeah.
2 people talking about it.
Of course.
And he's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was quite good. See, that was good because it started a bit, whee! And then suddenly...
Yeah, if you didn't have to go to squash, we'd be here for another 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm going to get changed. Well, that was probably
You dropped me in Monaco?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how'd you get it? Naomi dropped you.
No, dropped me here, but she said that she's gone to a kid's birthday party, and we were trying to figure it out. I was like, Dad, just drop me in Monaco. I got to do some shopping anyway. Yeah. Just on the main strip.
Yeah, no props. That was great!